Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scuzz, Stick Check Scousebow.
Oh yeah, it's Final Four for women's lacrosse, and the Cats are right there, sitting with the number one seed. It is not all chalk though. In Florida, after their upset over Maryland, which we'll talk about in a sec, but we run into the Gators on Friday afternoon, and this is gonna be a fun one. This is gonna be real interesting. Florida is just playing white hot lacrosse right now.
Well, so let's, before we get there, like the lead in, right, which is funny because it's like the juxtaposition, right? We come in, we just played an Ivy League school, right? We played like a blue blood, like traditional, like power center, right? Of course, like Atlantic Coast, like, and put it on them, right? Like we whooped on Penn. It was blistering. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I feel like if you run from the Big Ten tournament championship through the first two games against Denver and Penn in the NCAAs, Northwestern's performance in the second and third quarters is ludicrous. The damage that Northwestern is doing in the middle of matches right now is just insane. They went 14-3 against Penn in that stretch, just absolutely blew it away. And as we've said before, it's all the names you know. It's that massive power plant in attack that is just star-laden where you just go. It's just like Skane, Taylor, Kuykendall, Monty, and it just goes and goes and goes. Frank, and just burying teams. And then it's a thing where it's like, it's in a way, and I know we're going to get into it, but I think because Maryland was such a known commodity for us and the way the team's playing right now, I think very much there was part of me that was like, give me Maryland right now. Give me that team that I know we know so well while we're this hot, but that's not who we're getting. We're getting a totally different animal, and honestly, like, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, when you look at them on paper, Florida kind of resembles Northwestern. They've got a similar goal ratio to their opponents. They've got pretty good shot percentages. They've got two really excellent offensive players, whereas we have three. But they're a strong team, and it's a little hard to parse, right? Because they play in an inferior conference, and really dominated competition in that conference. They lost a couple games at the beginning of the year. North Carolina, they lost to Loyola Maryland. They then beat Maryland in OT, and then haven't lost since. 20-2 overall. So yeah, this is an unfamiliar animal for this Northwestern team. However, if you may recall from the halcyon days of the aughts, which saw the rise of Northwestern lacrosse from literally nothing to six-time national champion in a row. During that time, Florida and Northwestern were in the same conference and were basically the top two teams in the American Conference. They almost always saw each other in the conference tournament, and it was a tough matchup for Northwestern. The coach at Florida has been there since then. There's a former Northwestern player, Christina Esposito, who's on the coaching staff as an assistant at Florida now. So while these teams have not seen each other in quite a while, there's a lot of like historical familiarity here, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see how these teams match up.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the small conference thing. It's fascinating because, like you said, there's that shared history of the two schools when they were both in the American Lacrosse Conference. And that's the thing, right? Like the Gators, they've been 4 years in the Big East, 6 years in the American for lacrosse. That's 10 total years. In those 10 years, they have 2 losses in conference in lacrosse. So obviously these are low. It's two low level conferences that they lord over. But it's funny. I think back to when we played Loyola in the tournament last year, and yes, Loyola I think was ranked. What were they, as high as? I think they were ninth when we played them. And their record in conference was just absolutely insane. And I remember their offensive numbers were absolutely ludicrous. And then they went up against Northwestern and we steamrolled them, right? And there definitely still is that hegemony at the top where your top conferences just lord over this sport. But Florida is, they're very much an exception in a couple of ways. One, yes, like they're a lower conference, but as we've been, I feel like, hammering home all lacrosse season talking about this, all of the top teams are getting out and playing each other now. And like at the beginning of the season, they played North Carolina, they played Maryland, right?
So I'm going to disagree with you because unlike Northwestern, who played all the top teams, the best team they've played this year is Maryland twice.
Well, that's true. But Maryland and North Carolina, right?
And
but
North Carolina was not nearly as good this year as they have been in years past.
No BC, no Syracuse, no Northwestern.
Well, true. I think my point is they did play UNC and Maryland at the start of the season, right? And obviously that bore fruit because they lost big to North Carolina, and then they beat Maryland, but by a whisker. They won in overtime, 13-12. Both of those teams are teams that they came back and beat in the tournament.
Handily.
Right.
Yeah.
That experience bore fruit. And also, this is a team that they lost to Loyola to open the season, lost to North Carolina, and that's it. They haven't lost since then. 20 in a row. They're white hot. And then the other thing is kind of in a larger sense, and this is where kind of that exception, you look at, I think we think of Northwestern, right? And one of the things that we're all so proud about with Northwestern lacrosse is the idea that Northwestern was, one of the schools that struck the first great blow against that Atlantic seaboard hegemony in lacrosse, women's and men's, right? And suddenly there was this team from the Midwest that stepped in and was racking up national champions and proving that it could be like a universal geographic game. Well, Florida's Florida. Like, we know where they stand in every other sport, right? And the SEC doesn't prioritize women's lacrosse. But I think you can look and be like, look at the way Florida's playing right now. Next year, they're moving into the Big 12 for lacrosse, which is constituting a brand new women's lacrosse conference. We talk Colorado is going to be in it, a couple other schools. And they represent the ascendancy, just like we do. Right? Like a future where women's lacrosse gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the SEC is going to get involved and Florida's going to be right at the top of the list. So it's important. It's an important match. But like Scott said, between two teams that have a ton of history, and Florida's just damn good.
The other interesting similarity between these two teams is that Florida is very, very senior laden as well. Of their top 7, I'll say scorers, because that's just how I've sorted the table. It's hard, it's hard to discern decent defense without, doing some serious, digging into the tape, etc. But of their top 7 scorers, they've got like a sophomore. Pretty much everybody else is a senior, and then they have one grad transfer from Albany. So this is a tenured team. John, you made the point before we got on that like 2 of their best players transferred. I think, was it Boston College?
Yeah, to BC
before the year. So
top attacker and a top defender. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an interesting angle. But this is a team, they're not going to get shaken. They're not going to get intimidated by Northwestern. I am much like we talked about with Penn last week. Like the expectation is that Northwestern will figure out, adapt, and handle this team. I mean, Northwestern is spectacularly skilled on both ends of the field, as we have talked many, many, many times. And there's nothing about this that changes it. But it does present a compelling, interesting, difficult matchup. I think it's going to be a great game to watch on Friday afternoon.
And that's the thing. It's the Final Four. It's going to be a tough matchup. Right. I mean, it's not like,
There's no easy wins at this stage.
We're not just coasting all the way to a national championship here. I mean, we're going to play really, really good teams. On the other side of the bracket, we got Syracuse and BC. I mean, 2 incredible teams. But first, we got to deal with Florida on Friday afternoon.
I'm curious now, did they go to the tournament last year?
Oh, I was looking at this. I know that I think they haven't been to a Final Four in over a decade. I was looking at this earlier, and I forget if they made the tournament last year.
So it looks like they made the tournament. They beat Jacksonville in the first round. Oh, it looks like they hosted last. Wait, what? American Athletic Conference Tournament. It's. I mean, like these games are listed as being in Gainesville, Florida. So they played Jacksonville. They beat them, and then they lost to Notre Dame by 1.
Okay.
In the tournament last year, so they would have lost in the quarterfinals.
And then, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up too about them is, I know if you look at Penn, but certainly if you look at the Big Ten tournament against Penn State, Northwestern has spent a couple of the past games when they acquitted themselves well, but kind of feeling out their opponent in the first quarter, and in the case of Penn State, kind of getting a grips on Penn State. And then, as we talked about, in the second and third, they've absolutely gone bananas.
Hammer time, yeah.
Yeah, they've absolutely dropped the hammer. Well, Maryland was the better team in the second, third, and fourth quarters against Florida. But it didn't matter because Florida won the first quarter against Maryland 9-1. Woo. You give Florida a chance, they will jump on you. And
that's a really good point. Northwestern will have to be on from the get-go to avoid a similar fate.
Well, we will have to see what happens on Friday afternoon. Obviously, if things go well there, we're looking at the championship game, national championship on Sunday. Like I say, against the winner of Syracuse or BC. Again, assuming we get past Florida, which is not a for sure thing whatsoever. We'll be back next week to wrap that all up. Speaking of wrapping things up.
Briefly before you move on, Sam, like speaking of games that are going to be absolutely lit, those are two teams, Syracuse and BC, that know each other extremely well. Yeah. Have been in the mix for the Final Four in the championship the last 3, 4, 5 years. Just an absolute haymaker of a Final Four matchup. And Northwestern saw both those teams earlier in the year, beat them both in very, very close games. And
the BC game on the road, on the road in the cold. Remember, it was a night game.
Yep.
It was freezing in Boston, and we eked out the win there.
Number 1 rated, but regardless, that other semifinal is going to be a absolutely just a howitzer of a game.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Speaking of howitzers, I guess, as we turn our attention to the softball,
we can't be the number 1 team in the country in every sport.
And Northwestern was involved in games against a number 1 team. My God, Texas softball, holy crap, Whew. They are flipping good. Cats went down to Austin, got beat by Texas twice. And
well, I think it's important to call out Northwestern won 2 postseason games. They beat St. Francis twice, and they did I would say
they made it to championship Sunday. That's absolutely a huge deal for sure.
Yeah, but they met expectations. We knew Texas was going to be really hard. But I just think it's really important as we continue to we're wrapping up this team, but we're still celebrating a little bit. They got 2 postseason wins.
Yeah.
The experience for the young players that we've been talking about all season long on this team. It just is really exciting what they're going to be able to build to from here.
Lest we not mention the 6 brand new defensive starters from last season. Although at the end of the season they're not new anymore. So like the fact that the announcers were like hammering that every single game, it's like guys.
But it was respect. But I mean, it is true, right? Respected. Like there's a reason Coach Drohan won Coach of the Year, right? I mean, to do all that was absolutely incredible. I think you're right. One of our Twitter followers, I think, made the point that it's like you look at the score lines of those 2 Texas losses, and like at the end of the day, it's just a loss. You either win or you lose. The rest is just window dressing. And I think if you would have asked the vast majority of the wagering public, how is this regional going to go down? It went down the exact way everyone thought it was going to go down, right? It's like, right, Northwestern won their opening match, lost to Texas, then won their elimination match, and then got to the chance to lose to Texas again. I mean, I think that's realistically, we all hope for the best, but it's kind of like playing UConn in the tournament, right? Like you hope for the best while at the same time understanding, right? I mean, that's the thing. You're going through every single player. I was laughing across both games. It's like every single player, it's like Big 12 freshman of the year, national freshman finalist, like player of the year, one of the top 10 players in the year. And it just goes on and on and on. And they all bat like 380 to 400. And then they have 5, I think Scuzz or Noah mentioned on the pod last week. I mean, they had a pitcher throw a 1-hitter against us. They started a different pitcher, and then they had 3 other pitchers that they never even went to, and they're that deep from a pitching standpoint. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, right? Like I'm very inclined to just throw the scores of those 2 games out, and just be like, look, we went down there, held our heads high, 1-2, and lost to the best team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, and like they went out with their heads held high too. I mean, they never quit. They played their butts off the entire way through. And, just shout. I mean, we could just shout out everyone. But, like, what I
was going to say, can I give you a specific representative example of exactly what
I was
you're
about to
talking
ask
about?
for, like, specific. Yeah, hit us.
And Angela Zedak's last career at bat, she doubled to deep center to break up a no-hitter. That's her last at bat. I mean, that's a team that they were down who knows how many runs, right? They were just underneath the run rule limit. And the game was long over. Their pitcher was absolutely dominating, and that was Angela Zedak's last at bat. She got up there and clocked one to dead center and put it off the wall and got herself a double. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, that's the spirit of the team. You're absolutely right. And I think one of our regrets, and we talked about this last week, with kind of the understanding that there was a really good chance this was happening. We don't know if it was an injury or what, but Ashley Miller just, with about 5 to 6 games left in the season, just started to have really, really big control problems. And that carried all the way into this regional. And Coach Drohan gave her a bunch of chances and just hoping that, things would level out, and it just never really happened. None of us have anything but the highest praise for Ashley Miller. This was the Big Ten's best pitcher. She was phenomenal this season. She carried the team early in the season when the bats were not going, and then she just lost control at the end. And I mean, I think we're wistful in that I would have loved to see her get the pitching chance she deserved against Texas, just so we could see. I just wanted to see how close we could get to them with our ace at her very best. As it was, though, Riley and Renee had to come in, and I mean, yeah, that sucks to have to play bats like that, but it's super valuable experience. And like you said, you have a team fighting to the end. You have a couple older players who are absolute champions like Angela Zedak, and then you have a bunch of young players that you're building experience for the future.
Yeah, I mean, and like the pitching, Riley Gridzlonic came in and pitched really well. Like, again, against the best team in the country, she played great, and like I'm real excited to watch her, her career. I mean, she's gonna be awesome, and
maybe by the end of it we'll learn how to say Gridzlonic backwards.
Well, we shall see. But also, I mean, Renee Cunningham, they both came in and pitched really, really well, and they're both freshmen.
Yep. And then they're both big time. Riley and Renee, we're going to be saying that for a long time. And you look at just the young heart of this team. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's the two sides. On one hand, you have this young heart of this team. I think of Kelsey Nader, right? In a game where the first Texas game, when nothing was going right, Kelsey Nader was playing out of her mind. She had 2 diving catches. She hit a home run. And then had a double in addition, I think. It was just an unbelievable game. And that's someone with a ton of softball ahead of her, right? And then I think we looked at the last 5 at-bats of the game were, who was it? It was Bridget, maybe Emma, and Izzy. I mean, just young players, freshmen and sophomores, right? And there's so much softball ahead of all of them and so much talent on this team. And then at the same time, I mean, I kind of get a little misty in the 7th inning of this one, because realizing that it's the last go-around for Hannah Katie and Angela Zidak. Seeing them go out to left and go out to third base for the final time, I mean, you have to, you almost have to reach back mentally and emotionally to be like, these two they started the vast majority of the games the season before the College World Series trip, right? So it's like we all entered that season knowing that there was that dream, knowing that there was that chance, right? And they'd been part of the team. They were a part of it, So they were already on the field when that February Magic started that year. And I just feel like they've been in our lives forever. 3 rings, a world champion, a College World Series trip, 2 super regionals. They are the last piece of that great era. You get a little emotional, like watching them go out there for the last time and knowing that's
But
it.
I mean, them bridging to this era, I mean, everyone coming back now has that experience. They've got a Big Ten championship, regular season championship. They've got postseason wins. They went to the house of the number 1 team in the country and stared them in the face twice. Like that's huge. And the recruiting is still is incredible. So I mean, I don't know all the names coming in next season, but they're going to be awesome. So like the bridge to now the young guns, right? And like the sky's the limit here.
Truly. I mean, they are an amazing team, amazing talent, like you said. I mean, like Scuzz said, Riley and Renee, like the pitching, the talent coming in.
And, Lauren Boyd coming back next year, potentially.
Right. She got the medical red shirt, so she'll be back. And, yeah, I mean, there are so many weapons on this team. And you look at development, too. I mean, like we talk about this with Coach Drohan. We have given her so many kudos from the work that she does. The work that she did this year in terms of having to replace so many players and finding, the talent and finding the new holes to plug in. But a huge amount of that's player development. And for me, like the player that I look at first and foremost when I talk about this is Emma Ray. Emma Ray was great at the start of the season. She was unreal by the end of the season. Big Ten's best defensive catcher and an absolute terror at the plate by the end of the season. She's just going to keep getting better and better. And there are a ton of players like that. That's the glory of having a young team like that. And we haven't even mentioned Kansas, right? One of the best second basemen in the entire country. So, yeah, you're right. It's magical, and we wistful about this generation that's come, but super excited for the future.
Have you ever thought about building a Westlaw Pirates-like community for your business? If so, we've got your solution. Teamworks Media, a brand marketing and content company, is here to help you tell your brand story better. Better yet, you can work directly with the founder, Jay Sharman, known on this podcast as Like the Posts. The same expertise he's brought to brands like ESPN, the Big Ten Conference, and Northwestern University are now available to you in an affordable way, directly with this Wildcat superfan. Contact Jay directly at 446-9435 or j@teamworksmedia.com to learn how to elevate your brand story. Also want to shout out baseball. I mean, we have not spoken a lot about baseball this season. It has been like the senior class leaving baseball this season has, to call what they've been through a roller coaster is just, short selling it 1,000,000%. Like, it has just been insane what's been going on with the baseball team. But like, it feels like there's now some stability. Yeah,
they've had 3 different coaches in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some controversy. Obviously, a coach that was at best very difficult to play for, and not making players on the team, coaches on the team feel welcome, included, etc. And They had a tough year. I think with non-con they started out okay, and Big Ten was really tough for this team. But like one of the highlights was getting a last-second walk-off win against Minnesota, the final weekend of the year. I believe it was on Friday, right? They
Yep.
It was a back-and-forth game. They tied it up late, and then I think tied it and won it on a infield single that got thrown into the outfield. By I want to say the third baseman, et cetera. So a pretty exciting moment for the team to win that game. They did not win on senior day the next day, but I think one thing that's exciting about this squad is the top 4 players offensively: Bennett Markinson, Owen McElftrick, Preston Knott, and Jackson Freeman, who was like an excellent first-year player for the team.
All Big Ten, all
yeah. So all
team,
4 of these guys are coming back next year if they want, and there's something to build on. Coach Ben Greenspan in his first year, viewed as an up-and-coming coach the last several years. Played his college ball at, I believe, was it UConn before he transferred to Indiana?
Yeah,
and then coached at Cal Poly, ended up coaching at Michigan, and was kind of got on the radar as like an up-and-coming coach while he was at Michigan and as an assistant. So, has made a mark his first year, and we'll see how we go as we get into year 2 of the Greenspan era. And it'd be really fun to see this squad pick things up and start to make their way.
And like you said, part of it is that young core of talent. And you look at the way they finished, right? They had that awesome win against Minnesota on Friday. They almost pulled it out on Sunday, too. That one was tight the entire way, and that would have been a series win over the Gophers. So, and I think they had one series win earlier in the season also. So, again, obviously we know the work that's ahead of this team. We know the way that they need to build to move up, but they're putting the right pieces in place.
Also, shout outs to women's golf who, made the NCAA finals. Stanford came away with the women's golf championship, but, to be playing in the championship tournament is huge. And
where'd we finish?
I've been spending this entire podcast trying to figure that out. And it's I can't tell if it's like top 15 or what. It's just like the scoreboards I'm seeing are just been a mess. So I don't know. I think it was...
I'm going to the article on NU Sports. It says... Let's see. Tied for 11th along with Florida State and Texas.
Hey, that's like top 15 in the country right there. Top 11 in the country. That's awesome. Yeah, that's just really, really awesome.
That is fantastic.
I mean, and in a larger context, right? Like, let's all keep in mind, never take it for granted that you have this many women's spring sports teams playing at this level at the same time. Never take that for granted. Never start to think that that's just something we get to enjoy, because almost no schools get to have that.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other spring sports to talk about except for the lacrosse this weekend.
Hello?
And that'll wrap it up for the 2023-24 season. The academic school year is over pretty much. We're getting real close to starting to put together our summer football previews. That's going to be fun. We're going to, with adding 4 new teams, we're going to have to look at how we're going to handle that. But yeah, we'll be back next week to recap the lacrosse and kind of lay out where we're going to go from there. But until then, we have anything else to talk about tonight?
Wanted to mention that we've seen from, I think, our man Jay, like the posts and Hail to Purple, etc. Ryan Field is now a complete. It is 100% no more. No structures, no nothing. It is a wide open space right now. It's time to start building. It's time to start building it up, but it's wide open. There's nothing there except trucks ready to get to work, and I would imagine the foundation work will be the next step.
Yeah, just seeing the pictures and like nothing there, and just watching the press box and the arches of the press box just like hanging on for dear life. Those were the last to come down. And John, you were telling us like when you were at that tailgate.
It's a miracle it lasted as long as it did.
So yeah, let the construction begin. We've got football, the seating chart, the pricing came out for season tickets this year. That's going to be a fun next few weeks trying to navigate all that. That'll be cool. But again, at the end of the day, we're going to be watching 5 games on the lake, and it's going to be freaking amazing.
I'm getting really excited to preview teams in the conference. I think there's that's going to be really fun, as it always is, and that just it's the mark in our calendar that kind of sparks the transition.
So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where we ask you to please share, like, and subscribe. And you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. Look for us in what used to be the West Lot of Ryan Field, where we will fly the red pirate flag high, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.